Royal Guard ran 200 yards to save a collapsing kid. The aftermath was heartbreaking. The morning started calmly, the kind of calm that felt planned and controlled. The royal grounds were open to the public, and people arrived early, hoping to get a good view. Families stood behind barriers, tourists held cameras, and children pointed excitedly at the guards who stood perfectly still. The guards wore their formal uniforms, their faces serious, their posture straight. They had trained for years to stand without moving, no matter the noise, the heat, or the crowd. Among the visitors was a small child, no more than 7 or 8 years old. The child stood close to a guardian, holding their hand at first, then letting go to step closer to the barrier. The child's eyes were wide with curiosity, watching the guards as if they were part of a storybook. The guardian smiled, thinking it was just another happy moment, something the child would remember later. The air was warm but not uncomfortable. People chatted quietly, laughing now and then. Some visitors whispered rules to their children, reminding them not to cross the barrier or shout. Everything felt safe and normal. No one expected anything to go wrong. The guards remained still, as trained. One of them stood slightly apart from the others, facing the crowd directly. His job was to watch, to observe, to remain alert while appearing unmoved. Though his face showed no emotion, his eyes scanned the area carefully. He noticed small things, people shifting their weight, children stepping forward, phones being raised. It was part of his routine, something he had done countless times before. The child near the front suddenly stopped moving. At first, no one noticed. Children often grew tired while standing, and it was common to see them lean or rest against the barrier. The guardian looked down and saw the child's face had lost its color. Before a word could be spoken, the child swayed slightly, as if dizzy. In the next moment, the child fell. It was not dramatic. There was no loud sound, no scream at first, just a small body collapsing onto the ground. For a second, people nearby thought the child had tripped. A woman stepped forward, ready to help the child up. Then she froze. The child did not move. The guardian's voice broke the calm. Panic rushed into the air. People backed away, unsure what to do. Someone called out for help. Others looked toward the guards, expecting action but unsure what that action should be. The rules were strict. Guards were not supposed to break formation unless ordered. Everyone knew this. Everyone waited. The guard who had been watching the crowd noticed the change immediately. He saw the small body on the ground, the way people stepped back instead of forward. He noticed the guardians shaking hands. In that instant, his training shifted from ceremony to instinct. Time seemed to slow. He could hear his own breathing inside the heavy uniform. His mind ran through rules, procedures, and consequences, but only for a brief second. What mattered more was the child lying still on the ground. He looked once toward his commanding officer's position, then back at the child. There was no signal yet. The crowd waited, frozen between hope and fear. The child did not move. The guard made his decision. He stepped forward. Gasps rippled through the crowd as people realized a guard was breaking formation. It was something rarely seen, something that immediately told everyone this was serious. The guard did not run yet. He took 2 fast steps, then another. When he was sure of his choice, he ran. The distance was long. Nearly 200 yards stretched between him and the child. The ground was open with no obstacles, but his uniform was heavy and designed for standing, not sprinting. Still, he pushed forward. His boots struck the ground hard. The sound echoed in the sudden silence. People moved out of the way instinctively. Some held their breath. Others whispered prayers without realizing it. Cameras lowered. Phones stopped recording. All eyes followed the guard as he ran with purpose, his focus locked on one small figure ahead. As he ran, his thoughts were simple. Reach the child. Help the child. Everything else could wait. The guardian knelt beside the child, calling their name again and again. The child's eyes were closed. Their breathing was faint, almost impossible to see. Fear spread quickly among those closest. Someone shouted for a medic. Another person waved frantically toward the guards. The guard closed the distance quickly, his heart pounding. When he reached the child, he dropped to his knees without hesitation. He placed one hand near the child's shoulder and another near the chest, checking for movement. He spoke calmly, even though his own chest felt tight. The child did not respond. The guard raised his head and called out clearly for medical assistance. His voice cut through the confusion. Nearby staff reacted immediately, radios crackling to life. Trained responders began moving toward the scene. The guard focused on the child, using the basic emergency training he had learned long ago. He checked breathing carefully, making sure the airway was clear. He stayed calm, knowing panic would only make things worse. The guardian watched him with wide eyes, holding onto hope with every breath. Around them, the crowd stayed silent. Children were pulled closer to their parents. Some adults turned away, unable to watch. Others stood still, rooted in place, witnessing a moment that would stay with them forever. The guard stayed with the child, speaking softly, encouraging them to hold on. He did not know if the child could hear him, but he spoke anyway. In moments like this, every word mattered, even if it went unheard. This was no longer a public event, no longer a royal display. It had become something deeply human. Sirens could be heard in the distance, faint but growing louder. The guard did not look up. His attention never left the child. He felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders, heavier than any uniform. This was part one of a day that began as ordinary and changed forever in a single moment. The guard stayed on his knees beside the child, fully focused. He could hear footsteps running closer and radios speaking quickly, but his attention never drifted. The child's breathing was weak, almost too light to notice. He placed his hand gently near the child's chest, watching carefully for movement. Every second felt heavy, like time itself had slowed. The guardian stood close, hands shaking, tears forming in their eyes. They wanted to help but did not know how. The guard spoke calmly to them, asking them to stay close and keep talking to the child. His voice was steady, trained to stay clear even in stressful moments. That calm helped the guardian breathe again, even if just a little. Within moments, trained staff arrived. They moved with purpose, creating space around the child. One of them checked the child quickly while another spoke into a radio, giving clear information. The guard explained what he had observed, how the child collapsed suddenly, and how little response there had been. He kept his words simple and direct. Medical equipment was brought forward. The sound of zippers and quick footsteps filled the air. The crowd was pushed back gently but firmly. People obeyed without protest. Everyone could feel the seriousness of the moment. What had begun as a quiet morning had turned into a scene filled with tension and worry. The guard stepped slightly aside to give the responders room, but he did not leave. He stayed close enough to help if needed. His breathing was still heavy from the long run, but he controlled it, keeping his focus sharp. Sweat gathered under his uniform, but he did not notice. As the responders worked, the child was carefully placed onto a stretcher. The guardian reached out, touching the child's hand, whispering their name again and again. The guard watched quietly, feeling a tightness in his chest. He had seen many things in his career, but nothing prepared him for the sight of a child so still. The stretcher was lifted, and the responders began moving quickly toward the waiting vehicle. Sirens were louder now, echoing through the open space. The guard walked alongside for a few steps, then stopped. He knew his place. His duty was to the grounds, to order and safety. Still, his eyes followed the stretcher until it disappeared from view. For a moment, everything felt unreal. The crowd remained silent, as if no one knew how to return to normal. Some people wiped their eyes. Others stood with hands clasped, lost in thought. The royal grounds, usually filled with controlled movement and quiet admiration, now felt heavy and still. A senior officer approached the guard. His expression was serious but calm. He spoke quietly, asking what had happened. The guard explained again, describing the collapse, the lack of movement, the urgency. He did not add emotion to his words. He simply stated the facts. The officer nodded, listening carefully. There was no anger in the officer's eyes, no immediate judgment, only understanding. He told the guard to return to his position. The guard hesitated for half a second, looking once more in the direction the vehicle had gone. Then he turned and walked back. The walk felt longer than the run. Each step was slower, heavier. His uniform felt tighter now, the weight of it pressing down on him. When he reached his place, he resumed his stance, straight back, eyes forward, still and silent. From the outside, he looked the same as before. From the inside, everything felt different. Time passed slowly. Visitors were allowed to leave, and some new ones arrived, unaware of what had just happened. Life continued as it always did. But for those who had seen the child fall, nothing felt quite normal anymore. The guard stood in position, his mind replaying the moment again and again. He wondered if he had noticed too late, if there was something he had missed, if running faster could have changed the outcome. These thoughts came without warning, circling his mind quietly. Training taught guards to control their thoughts, to remain focused on the present. He tried to do that now. He counted his breaths. He fixed his gaze straight ahead. Still, the image of the child remained. Hours later, the shift came to an end. The guard was dismissed and allowed to leave the grounds. As he walked away, the sounds of the day faded. The crowd noise, the footsteps, the distant voices, all of it blurred together. He sat alone for a while, resting on a bench away from the main path. His hands rested on his knees. Only then did he allow himself to feel the exhaustion. His legs ached from the run. His chest felt tight, not from physical effort, but from emotion he had kept locked away. People began talking online about what they had seen. Witnesses shared messages describing a guard who ran without hesitation. Some called it brave, others called it human. The guard did not see these messages. He did not know his actions were being noticed or discussed. He had not run to be seen. Later that day, information reached the guard through official channels. The child had been taken to the hospital in serious condition. There were no further details yet. The words stayed with him. Serious condition. He repeated them silently, holding onto the hope hidden inside them. That night, sleep came slowly. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw the child on the ground, the crowd frozen, the long stretch of space he had crossed. He reminded himself that he had acted, that he had not stood still. Still, the waiting was hard. Part 2 ended not with answers, but with uncertainty. A guard returned to his duty, carrying the weight of a moment that would never truly leave him. The next morning arrived quietly. The guard woke before dawn just as he always did. His routine had never failed him before. He dressed carefully, button by button, each movement practiced and steady. From the outside, nothing looked different, but inside his thoughts were already busy. The memory of the child followed him from the moment he opened his eyes. As he traveled back to the royal grounds, the city felt louder than usual. Cars passed, people walked by, and life moved forward without pause. It felt strange to him. Just one day earlier, time had almost stopped, yet now the world acted as if nothing had happened. When he arrived at his post, the atmosphere felt changed. Some guards gave him brief looks of recognition. Not long looks, just enough to say they knew. No one spoke about it openly. Guards were trained to keep things professional, to leave personal matters unspoken. Still, there was a quiet respect in the air. He took his position and stood tall. His body knew exactly what to do, even if his mind drifted. The morning visitors arrived slowly. A few faces from the day before returned, drawn back by curiosity or routine. Some of them glanced at the spot where the child had collapsed. Others avoided looking at it at all. The guard kept his eyes forward, but he noticed everything. Hours passed. Sunlight shifted across the stone ground. The guard remained still, but his thoughts moved freely. He wondered how the guardian was feeling. He imagined them sitting beside a hospital bed, holding a small hand, waiting for signs of improvement. He hoped there had been good news overnight. During a short break, a senior officer quietly called him aside. They stepped into a private area away from visitors. The officer spoke calmly, carefully choosing his words. He thanked the guard for his quick action and said an official review would be completed as required. There was no blame in his tone, only formality. Then the officer shared the update. The child had not made it through the night. The words were gentle, but they hit hard. For a moment the guard did not respond. He stood very still, staring at the ground. His training helped him stay composed, but inside something broke quietly. A heavy sadness settled in his chest. The officer continued speaking, explaining that doctors believed the condition was sudden and severe. Nothing could have been done to change the outcome. The guard nodded slowly, listening, but the words felt distant. All he could see was the child's face from the day before. When the officer finished, he placed a hand briefly on the guard's shoulder. It was a small gesture but meaningful. Then he left, allowing the guard a moment alone. The guard returned to his position soon after. From the outside, he looked the same as always. Straight posture, calm expression, stillness. Inside, his thoughts were loud. He replayed the moment again. The way the child fell, the silence of the crowd, the run, the sound of his boots on the ground. He wondered if he should have noticed earlier, if 1 second could have made a difference. Even knowing the truth did not quiet his thoughts. Visitors continued to arrive throughout the day. Some whispered to each other. Others pointed gently, telling their children about the guard who ran. A few parents held their children a little closer than before. The guard noticed this, and it made his chest tighten again. Later, he overheard 2 visitors talking softly nearby. They spoke about bravery, about duty, about how rare it was to see someone act without hesitation. The guard did not turn his head. He did not react. Praise felt strange to him now. It felt undeserved. During another break, he sat alone in a quiet room. He drank water slowly, his hands steady. His reflection in the mirror looked the same, but his eyes carried something new: experience, loss, understanding. He thought about why he had joined the service. It had never been for attention or honor. It had been to protect, to serve, to be useful when it mattered. That belief had not changed, but now he understood something deeper. Even when you do everything right, the outcome is not always what you hope for. That realization stayed with him as the day went on. By evening, the grounds grew quieter. The last visitors left and the lights softened. The guard finished his shift and walked out slowly. The place where everything had happened looked ordinary again. Clean, calm, almost peaceful. It was hard to believe how quickly a moment could disappear from the world, even when it stayed alive in memory. Outside the gates, the city moved on. The guard walked through it quietly. At home, he sat alone with his thoughts. He did not turn on the television. He did not check messages. He needed silence. Later that night, messages from fellow guards arrived. Short ones, respectful ones, words of support without too much emotion. He appreciated them more than he could say. Knowing others understood helped him feel less alone. Sleep came slowly again. When it did, it was light and broken. His dreams were filled with motion and stillness at the same time, running without moving, calling out without sound. When morning returned, he felt tired but steady. He rose and prepared once more. Duty did not stop. Life did not pause, and neither could he. Part 3 ended with acceptance beginning to form, not peace, not yet, but understanding. The guard carried the memory forward, knowing it would shape him quietly for the rest of his life. Days passed, but the weight of what had happened did not fade. The guard returned to his routine, yet every part of it felt different now. Standing still was no longer just a duty. It had become a space where memories surfaced without warning. The quiet moments were the hardest, When there was nothing to focus on but time itself, his thoughts returned to the child again and again. The royal grounds remained busy. Visitors came from many places, bringing children, cameras, and questions. Most of them did not know what had happened days earlier. Others did. Some recognized the guard, though they were not sure why. A few looked at him with curiosity, others with respect. He did not react to any of it. He kept his eyes forward, his posture firm, his expression calm. One afternoon, a woman stood near the barrier longer than most. She was not holding a camera. She was not talking. She simply watched the guards in silence. When her eyes met the guards, she gave a small nod. It was not dramatic. It was quiet and brief. Still, it stayed with him. In that nod, he felt understanding, even if no words were spoken. Later that day, a senior officer informed him that the child's family had sent a message through official channels. The message was short. It did not speak of blame or anger. It thanked the guard for trying, for not standing still when action was needed. The guard listened without speaking. When the officer finished reading, there was silence between them. The guard nodded once. That was all he could manage. His throat felt tight, and he did not trust his voice. The officer respected this and said nothing more. That night the guard sat alone again. This time, he allowed himself to think more openly. He thought about the family, about the empty space that child had left behind. He imagined the small things that would now feel heavy to them: an empty chair, a quiet room, toys left untouched. These thoughts hurt, but he did not push them away. He felt they deserved space. In the following days, the story appeared in small mentions online and in conversations. People spoke about a guard who ran, about courage, about humanity. Some wrote kind words. Others shared opinions. The guard did not search for these stories. He learned about them only when others mentioned them quietly. He did not correct anyone. He did not claim anything. To him, it was never about being seen. What mattered more were the changes he noticed in himself. He became more aware of people around him. He noticed children more. He watched their movements, their faces, the way they leaned on their guardians. He paid attention not just as a guard, but as a human being who understood how quickly things could change. One afternoon, he noticed a child looking tired near the barrier. The child was fine, just restless, but the guard subtly shifted his stance, watching closely. The guardian noticed too and guided the child to sit down. Nothing happened. No emergency followed. Still, the guard felt a quiet relief. He realized then that the experience had sharpened him, not weakened him. There were moments when the sadness returned without warning. A laugh from a child in the crowd, a small hand waving, a sudden silence. These moments hit hard, but he learned to breathe through them. He reminded himself that feeling did not mean failing. It meant caring. One evening, after his shift ended, he stayed behind briefly. The grounds were nearly empty. The light was soft and the air was cool. He stood near the place where the child had fallen. There was no mark on the ground, no sign that anything had happened there at all. He stood there for a long moment, not as a guard, but as a man. He did not speak. He did not kneel. He simply stood, letting the memory pass through him. Then quietly he turned and walked away. Back at home, he began writing, not for anyone else, just for himself. He wrote about the run, the stillness, the sounds, the silence. He wrote about doubt and hope living side by side. Writing did not erase the pain, but it helped him carry it. Weeks later, during training, new recruits were reminded of emergency response rules. The instructor spoke about staying alert, about making decisions when seconds mattered. Without being named, the guard's action was used as an example. The recruits listened closely. The guard stood among them silent. He did not feel proud. He felt responsible. Responsibility, he realized, did not end with one moment. It continued in how you lived afterward. As time went on, the sharpness of the pain softened slightly. It never disappeared, but it became easier to hold. The guard learned that some memories do not fade. They simply settle into who you are. He continued his duty with the same discipline as before, but with a deeper understanding. Standing still no longer meant doing nothing. It meant being ready, watching closely, caring quietly. Part 4 was not about closure. It was about carrying on, about learning to live with a moment that changed everything without letting it break what came next. Time continued to move forward, steady and quiet. The guard returned to his daily duties as the weeks turned into months. Seasons shifted, and the royal grounds changed with them. New visitors arrived, old ones left, and the place kept its calm rhythm. From the outside, it looked like nothing had changed. But inside the guard, something permanent had taken root. He had learned how to carry the memory without letting it overwhelm him. Some days were easier than others. On calm days, he could stand in silence without his thoughts drifting too far. On harder days, the memory returned suddenly, brought back by something small. A child's laugh, a guardian tying a shoelace, a tiny hand reaching for comfort. When that happened, he reminded himself to breathe, to stay present, to remain steady. One morning during a quiet shift, a young boy waved at him from behind the barrier. The boy smiled brightly, full of energy and curiosity. The guard did not move, but inside, something softened. The boy's guardian gently pulled him back, reminding him of the rules. The guard watched as they laughed together and walked away. That simple moment stayed with him for the rest of the day. He realized then that the memory he carried was not only about loss, it was also about awareness. It had taught him how valuable each moment was, how fragile life could be, and how important it was to act when action was needed. That understanding shaped everything he did afterward. From time to time, other guards quietly asked him about that day. Not out of curiosity, but respect. He never went into detail. He kept his words simple. He told them he acted because someone needed help, nothing more, nothing less. He did not want the moment to become larger than it already was. The story slowly faded from public attention. New events replaced it. News cycles moved on. The guard knew this was natural. Not everything needed to be remembered loudly to matter deeply. Some moments lived on quietly, shaping lives without needing headlines. One afternoon, a small envelope arrived through official channels. Inside was a short handwritten note from the child's family. It spoke of gratitude, not sorrow. It said they knew the guard had tried. It said his action mattered, even if the ending had been painful. There was no blame, only kindness. The guard read the note slowly. When he finished, he folded it carefully and placed it somewhere safe. He did not display it. He did not share it. It was private, meaningful, and enough. That night, for the first time in a long while, he slept deeply. As the years passed, the guard continued his service with the same discipline, but with a gentler understanding of the people around him. He became known not just as reliable, but observant. He noticed when visitors looked unwell, when children seemed tired, when something felt slightly off. Often, nothing came of it. Sometimes, his quiet attention made all the difference. He never spoke publicly about what he had done. He did not seek recognition. When others spoke of courage, he listened respectfully but remained silent. In his heart, he believed courage was not about being seen. It was about acting when it mattered, even if no one remembered your name. One evening, near the end of a long shift, he stood watching the sun lower in the sky. The grounds were peaceful. A family walked past, their child skipping happily between them. The guard watched them go, then returned his gaze forward. He thought about how that one moment had shaped him, how it had deepened his sense of duty, not just to rules but to people. He understood now that being a guard was not only about standing still. It was about readiness, care, and quiet strength. The memory of the child never left him, but it no longer felt heavy all the time. Instead, it felt like a reminder to stay human, even in uniform. A reminder that compassion had a place even in the most disciplined roles. When the guard eventually retired from service, There was no ceremony about that day. His career ended quietly, as he preferred. He left with respect, with lessons learned, and with a story that had shaped his life in ways words could never fully explain. Years later, visitors still came to the royal grounds. Children still watched the guards with wonder. Life continued just as it always had. But somewhere within that place, within one man's memory, lived a moment that proved something important. That even when the ending is heartbreaking, choosing to act with courage and care still matters. And that was the legacy of those 200 yards. Not a medal, not a title, but a quiet reminder that humanity can exist even in the strictest of duties.